What's up, Cerebral football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. In today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about the way the Green Bay Packers tried to defend the Philadelphia Eagles offense, kind of the results of everything, and then we'll talk a little bit about what I've noticed from Atlanta's defense and best guess estimate of what they may or may not try to do in order to defend this Philadelphia Eagles offense. So to start off with, guys, I think the first layer to this discussion is we have to talk about what happened during the game and like just how explosive this offense is. Because truth be told, we ended up killing three, particular drives due to turnovers. So we never got a chance to really put points up on the board because of those and still managed to put up at the end of the day 34 points. So, we had three drives that ended in a turnover. We had one fumble that was a result of a really bad snap. And then, we had two other, interceptions. We also had the missed exchange down on the goal line one time as well that we had to fall down on. So, I mean, we had a ton of turnovers that kind of impacted us. And yet this offense was so explosive. It still put up an extreme amount of points, guys. It still put up 34 points. Like that's a tough task, man. When you got a team that's turning the ball over and still putting up 34 points on you, they're tough to defend, guys. Straightforward. Obviously, from our perspective, we got some things to clean up. We got to dot our I's. We got to cross our T's. We're not there yet either. I'm not out here pumping my chest and beat my chest over like, a 3 turnover game. It's not acceptable. This team's got to be better than that. You don't win many games in the NFL when you're, -2 in the turnover margin. Like it's normally a pretty good way to lose NFL games is to be not only negative in a turnover margin, but be it by more than one. Like it's normally a really good way to lose games in the NFL, to be quite honest. However, this offense, it's pretty good, guys. Straightforward. This is a really good offense. I want to talk a little bit about what I saw from the offense. The first thing I saw was a concept. I don't know how to explain it yet. I don't know if we were facilitating the offense per se through the run game, but I do think that we were essentially kind of falling into the run game to bring this idea of rhythm back to the offense. So when we were lacking rhythm, when we needed that kind of like that jump start, like that idea of like, hey, we got to get this thing right again, right? We need to spearhead what we're doing here. We got to make sure that we're on track, right? We're playing in a state of flow, right? Some consistency to the offense. We kind of ran the ball a little bit in this game, especially in the first half, more than I was expecting. To give you it by the numbers, guys, in terms of the first half, we tied 6th overall in the NFL with 17 first half runs. We know that Saquon Barkley finished with over 20 carries and over 100 yards. Had a scorer in the end zone rushing the ball, had a receiving touchdown. Like, I mean, to an extent, one could say that when things were kind of getting a little out of sync, if you will, right? When we weren't playing with a lot of consistency, a lot of rhythm and flow to the offense, they did kind of lean into Saquon a little bit, which I think gave a lot of people a lot of excitement here in Philadelphia because the talk all offseason has been, can Saquon Barkley have a CMC level effect on the Philadelphia Eagles offense? If you go back to the year in it was 22 and they traded for CMC. To be fair, it's not like San Francisco's offense was bad. They were kind of going through some quarterbacks. They had a lot of injuries that year to quarterback position. But when they got CMC, there was a clear like boost to their offensive like production. Like CMC is clearly kind of the catalyst of their offense, to be quite fair. Obviously Shanahan, then CMC, but CMC is what help makes it kind of special, to be honest. Although shout out, I don't like the 49ers, but I got to be honest, man, they had a really good offensive output themselves minus CMC on Monday night, which, you got to give them credit for that, guys. Like that was not an easy thing to have happen late into your preparations. That's I think what we're talking about with Saquon right now is that at least for this, and mind you, I'm talking about a 1-game sample size, guys. We need very long lengths of the season in order to see if that's going to be a consistent thing. But when we had less than ideal field conditions, there's some arguments over whether that was just faulty turf, faulty grass mix, or if that was more just weather conditions caused the slick surface. And it really, no matter where you were playing, if you had that perfect combination of weather events, you were going to have a slip and slide, a water park type event out there. Ultimately, to me, I don't care. The bottom line was that we had really bad field conditions, and it clearly had an impact on the game. So I don't know how to judge that in light of that, guys, because, I mean, you do have to kind of look at it like, well, your offensive line has an inherent advantage over the defensive line. We're really good at run blocking, and we got a guy that can really, we can center on giving the ball to. We know we can get explosive plays out of him. And to talk about this, like how did we run Saquon? A pretty interesting mix here. 17 zone running plays compared to 7 gap is what PFF has it as. It's pretty good balance, right? Still a majority probably inside zone, guys, but they did run some gap, right? They ran some power, some concepts like that as well. He had 3 runs of 10 yards or greater. He had 1 yard, or one run of 15 yards or greater. And then he had the number 6 overall yards after contact mark at 3.58. So, I mean, Saquon was really effective in this game. I mean, we kind of, to an extent, facilitated the offense through Saquon early in the game. Was super productive when he got around the goal line. You know what I mean? Like, the guy put up big time numbers. I mean, he had three scores at the end of the day, guys. I think something like that. Was really good after contact in this game. Of course, field conditions can play into that. I get that, guys, but we can only judge what we have in front of us right now. And I mean, to be honest, you could see that there was a little pulling back here. So as heavy as we were involved with Saquon, and mind you, when we ran into what we call the 4-minute offense, 2-minute offense, guys, is your hurry up offense. It's when you're trying to facilitate points quickly. 4-minute offense is the inverse, right? It's when you're trying to drive, sustain clock, run as much time as you can inside of the score. You're trying to seal the game away, right? When we fell into the 4-minute offense, we did see them kind of depend upon Devontae Smith, so he did play a role in that. But I think when you look at explosive play rates and you kind of look at where they were coming from and kind of the way everything worked out, like 3 runs of over 10 yards, 1 run over 15 yards, so 4 kind of big plays there for Saquon, right? Well, you look at 20 plus yards, and I'm just looking at straight up targets. Okay, Johnny Wilson had 1 target above 20 yards. Devontae Smith had 1 target above 20 yards. A.J. Brown had 1 target above 20 yards. There's definitely a change into the guard here, right? And like I said, I'm not predicting that this is going to continue into week 8, 9, 10. You're going to see the same exact kind of offense. It's just interesting to see that's how we came out with the game plan for Green Bay in that environment down in, essentially Brazil. Like, it was a unique game plan, right? There was something that a lot of us have kind of called for, and we kind of got our wish and saw it play out a little bit. To put this into perspective, that's 3 targets above 20 yards, according to PFF, okay? To put this in perspective, Tyreek Hill alone had 5 targets above 20 yards in week 1. Jaden Reed, one of the receivers we played from Green Bay, had 3 targets himself above 20 yards. So Jaden Reed himself, kind of had, what we facilitated through all 3 of our receivers. But to be fair, it was just allocated. It was allocated to each guy a little bit, right? Devontae got a shot. AJ got a shot. There was kind of that one throwaway. I mean, they were trying to give Johnny Wilson to be able to elevate and go get the ball, but I mean, wasn't obviously the easiest of plays to be made there. I would say on average, it's not, like 3 or 4 deep shots per game. I don't think is like outside of what we would expect. It's just, it wasn't dominant towards a particular one receiver. Like, it wasn't like a dominant AJ game. It wasn't a dominant Devontae game in terms of like trying to target above 20 yards per se. So like we saw a little bit of the changing of the guard there schematically from the way we tried to attack the Green Bay defense. On that note, let me jump into some of the notes that I have here about Green Bay's defense. We were playing a guy in Halfley that is a college, coach, but he has many years in the NFL. So we knew his influence were. I told you guys that he's not running the 43 Miami defense, but that's the roots and the influence of his defense. Like, he is part of that subcategory of the dudes that followed that Jimmy Johnson 43 Miami defense that came from college ball into the league and dominated the league for quite some time. He's kind of running that similar concept out there in Green Bay right now. Behind that, they do play more man coverage than some other teams will. Like, I'll honestly say that I thought they were kind of falling into zone more than I expected them to do it. I thought they were going to be heavy man, but I think that speaks to the talent level we have to why they didn't want to do that, right? They didn't want to go and single themselves up on A.J. Brown. They didn't want to single themselves up on Devontae Smith too much, right? They didn't want to have to, work their way around to trying to defend Dallas Goedert in a mismatch situation, right? Then you got Saquon and Shipley and Gainwell from the backfield who can impact you from the passing game, right? I mean, I think eventually, I don't know how much, thought they put into like our wide receiver 3 spot and worrying about guys like Britton Covey and these dudes, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know they gave that much thought to it, but eventually that will come into play because we do have some speedsters there that can push, Jahan can push the field for you. So over time, that can become a concern, to be quite honest. But we saw that they didn't play as much man as we thought they would. They still ranked pretty highly. I mean, Eric Stokes played 11 snaps in man coverage. Jair Alexander played 12 snaps in man coverage. Keyshawn Nixon played 10 snaps in man coverage. That worked its way out to 29.7% for Stokes, 29.3% for Jair Alexander, and then 29.4% for Keyshawn Nixon. So upper third of the league in terms of man coverage, but this was definitely a system coming into it that was, believed to be a very heavy man scheme. And I think that they rethought that a little bit. I think they rethought that just based upon the fact that if you're going man, and you're turning your backs to Jalen Hurts, number one, that's a little bit of an issue, right? He can break the pocket and go off schedule on you at any point. That is a little bit of a concern to turn your back to him too often, right? But number two, it's just the fact that the playmakers on the outside, Kellen Moore's system, the fact that he will try to create free releases for his guys and he'll beat you like that. Like, I think that may have caused them to reconsider their game plan. I don't know that this will be indicative of their scheme going forward. I think that this may have been specific to a matchup, but my point will be made in 1 second if you stick with me, guys. The inverse is going to be true next week. Okay. Yeah, these guys may have played more zone than we were expecting, but these other guys in Atlanta, they didn't play a single man coverage snap. D. Alford, 0 man coverage snaps. AJ Terrell, 0 man coverage snaps. Mike Hughes, 0 man coverage snaps. Now, does that mean that they're going to play exactly 0 man coverage snaps against us next week as well? I don't know. I mean, I think part of that was, they want to keep all their eyes on Justin Fields and they want to make sure that the ball didn't get over their head, which it did a couple of times in that game, to be fair. Atlanta did get beat over their head a couple of times in that game. But nonetheless, I think you're going to see somewhat similar game plan. I mean, if they come out and they have 3 or 4 man coverage snaps, okay. I mean, they're going to pick their spots clearly. But with that said, I think the game plan is going to remain somewhat similar here, to where they're going to be a very much more a zone-based system against us. And when you're playing zone-based systems, then you have to know the concepts that beat zone-based systems. And, we got to see how that's going to impact things such as the way that we utilize motion sets, the way we motion stack sets, 3x1 sets, 1x3 dub sets, all those type of things, right? Like the way that we use things formationally to gain advantages, and in the route concepts that then follow that, because we will be playing a team that's going to be very, very heavy in terms of zone coverage. Now, are they going to log, like I said, are they going to log exactly 0 snaps of man coverage against us? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine there. If you feel confident, bet your money there, guys. But, I think what comes into play is that where you would have more man coverage, beating concepts built into the Green Bay game plan, I would assume that when we look at this one and we get down to what Kellen Moore is going to do, you're going to see more of the zone kind of beating concepts. So when I say zone beating concepts, you're talking about things like levels, like when you run a dig deeper and then you come behind, or, you come behind that dig basically with like an in route or a slant or something. So you're playing levels, you're playing levels there to the defense there. The other thing you could use is like, you can use triple and floods. That's like where you do like you go from one side of the field and you're coming across the other side of the field and you're just kind of like, it's a combination between leveling and spacing. So like you have say you have a drag route and then you have an angle route. You got someone kind of running an angle route a little deeper than the drag route. And then, behind those two routes, then you have something like a dig route behind that. And they're all basically coming from left to right or right to left, whatever, they're basically trying to create that idea of creating levels and spacing on the field. Continuing on the spacing, that's another concept you'll see. And in general, when you're talking about zone, concepts in terms of the route combinations, all of it is about spacing, but I'm talking about specific spacing routes. Okay. The best way I can explain this to you is if you're in a 3x1 stack, all right, or even a 1x3 dub, whatever, you have like curl and stick routes, right? So you got these built in kind of level things, right? So you got like a curl and a stick route, right? So you got 2 guys running curl and a stick, and then you got a guy going to the flats. Okay. So you're creating spacing, right? You're trying to get the offense essentially towards the hash marks, and you're trying to get kind of an outlet to the outside. So you could do like curl and sticks with a flat route or curl and sticks with a wheel route, something like that. And then on the ISO side, you have something that is probably going to resemble more of a man beater. So you're talking about like your slants or something like that, right? Something that could get quickly open essentially, right? And utilize the isolation. So that one receiver who's in isolation, that person's probably, you're trying to find a way of beating that guy one-on-one essentially. Expect to see some AJ Brown in that situation there because he's just a really good ISO player. I just think he's hard to stop in doing that. There are some other things you can do. There's slant and flats. Slant and flats are a really common spacing concept that you'll see run inside a route tree. So you run slants, and then behind those slants, you run flat routes. You can run slant and wheels. It's all the same thing, guys. You can run those concepts. You're just talking about creating spacing on the football field. Past that, the staples of any zone system is going to be high-low. You guys know these concepts. I mean, they were in the red zone. Greg Cosell was pointing it out today. He was talking about a corner flat concept. So on the A.J. Brown interception where A.J. Brown slipped, you have empty back set to the top side or to basically the boundary side, the left side of Jalen Hurts. you had essentially what was a high-low concept. So you had a corner and a flat route kind of built in there. Something that's lower and higher. Actually, that corner route with Dallas Goedert does come open. And if Jalen had made the decision pre-snap to go left, he could have easily stepped up into the pocket instead of rolling the pocket and probably could have easily made that completion. And yes, I am saying roll in the pocket on that play because I don't think that he sensed false pressure there. I think that he noticed quickly into the route's progression that it wasn't open. Like he chose the right side, he chose the opposite side of the field. And I think he saw really quickly that Green Bay had covered that quite well. And the only way that he was going to create separation was for him to move the pocket. But then he made a horrible decision that as he moved the pocket and everyone moved with him, then AJ was able to leak out. But then he made that throw a little late, threw it across his body. AJ slipped. There's a lot of factors there that kind of caused that play to be kind of a bad concept in the very end of the day, right? Some other things you can talk about in terms of high-low. This one kind of falls in between high-low and even a floods concept, like your sail concept. So your sail concept is kind of that kind of arching type motion that comes out of there. You see tight ends running a lot, things like that. You'll see things like 9 and flat. So you got a 9 route, go route, basically with a flat built in. It's a high-low concept, guys. Smash, your smash route combinations, that's high-low. Crossers. So basically, if you do a crosser with like a high-low concept where you have like a dig, you got a dig going on the higher end of it, like a dig and like over concept. So like you have these two concepts that can compete with each other. So like you got a dig coming from one side and you have the over coming from the other side, and you're letting this thing kind of build out and play itself, and you're high-lowing someone, probably your corner. So in that situation, you're expecting a corner to be playing down inside of the lower zone area. So you're trying to high-low that individual essentially. And then you probably release something into the flats as well. So, you could kind of borders into the flood concepts. Flood's the same thing, right? It's a 3-level concept where you're releasing 3 routes into the progression that challenges how they cover those. So you can have something like a corner route. So a good example of like flood concepts you could see built in would be something like a slot corner or a slot fade kind of route. And then off of the slot fade or slot corner, you got something like, a dig route, or you got like an over route coming from the other side of the field. They're coming on an over route. And then you build that into with a little flat route combination, like a speed 3 or something, as well, that kind of holds everybody together. So that's what you're going to see in terms of like zone coverages. You're going to see them playing levels. You're going to see them playing spacing, high lows, and then flood concepts are the ones that you normally see in these situations. I don't know formationally how they'll disguise this stuff, guys. Like that's things that we have to get a feel for with Kellen Moore in the system and the way he's going to do these things. I think Kellen Moore is known for getting the free releases more than anything versus man coverage, but there is an element to this that, is important even in zone coverages when you're using motion. And one of the things that you've heard discussed here recently is the fact that, yes, while Nick Sirianni did not prefer motion, it's not necessarily Nick Sirianni who spearheaded such low rates of motion. We're kind of finding that out, that was actually more of a Jeff Stoutland preference, because the problem he has inside of the run game in particular with motion is when you motion something over, then you're causing a line shift, which you're changing the blocking scheme on runs. So he particularly didn't favor it. It's not that he can't effectively coach it, can't help effectively scheme it. Jeff Stoutland has had the roles of run game coordinator here in Philadelphia. So, things like that. And I will say that one thing I saw on Kellen Moore's film is he uses his tight ends in the run game quite a bit and motions them. You'll see some return motions, some over motions, all those kind of things to set up the run game. So that's going to be interesting to see if these guys are just being way too passive and they're just sitting back and just trying to keep everything in front of them. It will be interesting to see how quickly they start moving to motion-based run plays and how Stoutland and, Kellen Moore vibe together, how they form that cohesion, how everything kind of comes together, how they make that magic in terms of the run game. Because I do think this is a game to where, depending on how Atlanta plays things, this could be a huge run game. If you want to go back and think of like some of the things we saw, remember Minnesota where they kept bringing the simulated pressure looks at us last year in that Minnesota game. And then finally we made the adjustment in the second half to just absolutely destroy them when they did that simulated pressure and run the ball on inside zone right at them. Like, I think this could be one of those situations, guys, where you see similar concepts start to come into play a little bit, to where you're going to see guys that, you'll see a rhythm and a flow towards the run game, I think, depending on how Atlanta plays things. Like, everything is dependent upon what they do schematically to combat things. But I do expect them to probably try to leverage us against the passing game and try to keep everything in front of them. So this will be a really good test too for Kellen Moore's system to play within rhythm, structure, and rhythm of offense. So, quick, get the ball out, create spacing fast for your quarterback, not have him holding on for decades onto the ball for his zone coverages. This is definitely going to be kind of a test as well in terms of schematically what can happen. The last statement I'll say before we jump into talking about, just getting into your guys' comments and everything. The last thing I'll bring up, guys, is all of last year, we won some games. We were ranked as one of the best teams in the league in terms of winning games by 4 or more points. But then when you filtered it by 7 or more points, we won exactly 0 games last year by 7 or more points. We were favored by 6.5 points. So it's basically a 7-pointer. This is a chance to prove some things, right? We didn't have any games last year where we won by more than 7 points. So this is an opportunity to win by more than 7 points. This is a first test. This is against an opponent that has really, really, solid playmakers around them. I don't know about the health of their quarterback, and I don't think Kirk Cousins has been particularly good against us. I think we've kind of had Kirk Cousins' number recently. So it's going to be an interesting matchup because we have an opportunity to, set the pace like we did back in 2024 or 2022. My bad, guys. Hopefully we'll be 2024. So where we kind of set the tone in that Minnesota game with Kirk Cousins in prime time and just absolutely took it to him, man. So hopefully we'll have the opportunity to kind of maybe put people's minds at ease, maybe, back down some of the tension here around like not blowing teams out. I'm not talking about a blowout where you're beating them like 20 by 20 points, but getting a solid 7+ point win, it's a pretty heavy column mark here, right? I mean, to give you an example of some teams that did really well in this category, it's kind of funny because last year with Dallas, Dallas at home was a really good team minus the playoffs, but Dallas at home was a really good team. And they had won 12 games by 7 points or more. So when they won, they tended to win pretty big. However, when they were road underdogs last year, it was abysmal. They were 0-4 last year as road underdogs. But they won. When they won, they really won games. And it was something the Eagles were winning these like really big, important matchups with like Miami and Kansas City and Buffalo. We were winning these tough games for a while until we finally got caught by San Francisco. And then it all came undone. I think this is a chance to kind of maybe ease some minds and make things right again, right? To kind of get people back on track a little bit with the momentum of this organization and like where we are in terms of the overall health of the organization, not just from the players, not just from the coaches, but the front office. I think everyone could kind of breathe that, that sigh of relief if you get that 7+ win. Now, do I care if we win by 8 points or 1 point? No, I just care if you win. But there's an element to this. I do think it's worth mentioning. So I'm just bringing it up in the fact that yes, that is an element there, and we do need to be aware of that. All right, guys, let's jump into some of the questions, man. What's up, Regal Eagle? How you doing, buddy? Keisha, how are you? What's up, Joe? How are you, man? Let's remember to hit that like button. Thank you. Hey, man, I appreciate y'all. What's up, Antonio? Appreciate it, man. Coach Steve, hey, appreciate that, guys. Appreciate it, man. What's up, Messiah? How you doing, buddy? Messiah says when Jalen gets the protection all right and he is used to this offense, my bad, man, it is going to be scary for years. Yeah, I mean, look, that's one thing that's not being discussed, Messiah, is it sucks to not have consistency at the coordinator spot, but when you keep getting fed these concepts, it's only a matter of time before you can pretty much evolve. If you're surviving this stuff and getting better as a quarterback, eventually I can tell you what's going to happen. Any coordinator comes in here is going to be coming in here to work with Jalen Hurts. And it's going to be the way that some of these other top tier quarterbacks have done, to where systems are going to matter, but the systems are going to be somewhat controlled by the quarterback. And I think that's what can happen as you keep building momentum there. He keeps getting exposed to all these different systems. I think eventually he's going to start getting some influence here. I do think that could be a potential outcome there, Messiah. What's up, Easy? How you doing, buddy? Joe said, Coach, based on his history, is Kellen Moore a balanced OC, or is he a heavy run OC or a heavy pass OC? I understand the score takes the play calling. Your thoughts? Your end point is a very good point, Joe, which is the score is going to dictate some of this. But I will say he faced some criticism in Dallas about not running the ball, not managing that 4-minute offense as well in Dallas as they wanted him to. The head coach there threw shade at him and was like, hey, I'm not worried about running the score up on guys. I'm worried about getting out of the game healthy. I'm worried about getting out of the game, without jeopardizing turnovers. He's like, we don't need to throw the ball 100 times, basically. I will say that, during the 4-minute offense, I thought they did a really good job of mixing in the run with the pass. Devontae Smith was a very big part of that. Like, we had a lot of early half runs. We definitely kind of set the rhythm up through the running game. But late in that game, when we fell into the 4-minute offense, it was a lot of passes. Now, you could tell that they were just trying to drain clock because, there were some opportunities for them to score. If they really wanted to put more points up on the board, they could have. And that's kind of the funny thing about that 7-point stat thing, Joe, is like, if we wanted to win that game, last Friday by more than 5 points, we could have. We easily could have, right? We kicked a field goal and throw the interception. It's an 8-point lead right there. If we just go down and drive and score on that last one, and we take no mercy on them, then yeah, that's going to be more than a 7-point win, more than likely. Obviously they get a chance to come back and score themselves, but you get what I'm saying. Like, sometimes that 7-point stat thing, like, it isn't, it's important to understand it, but there's some nuance to it too. Easy said, I missed most of your segment. Do you think we use too many half-field reads and predetermined throws? No, in Kellen Moore's system, Easy, you're going to have every throw is predetermined, to be fair, Easy. Like, you normally have built-in progressions, so it's all predetermined. It's based upon the leverage that guys are playing with. That's why I think it's funny when people talk about, like, oh, this guy's a one read quarterback. Like, well, that's only an issue if they're not reading leverage correctly and they're turning the ball over, right? Or they're not able to throw into tight windows. Then yeah, that's a problem. But ideally, you'd like your quarterback to not have to go past a one read progression very often, because that means that you're failing schematically to do things. To be fair, if you go back to 2022, in 2022, he threw to his first read progression, I think, like top of the league, and he was on fire. Nobody could stop this offense. In 2023, he was back towards the bottom of the league. He was in the bottom third of the league, really bottom like 5-6 guys in terms of like one read progressions. Like, he was actually getting into second, third reads, and that was because the offense, to me, it wasn't quite as good, right? We weren't scheming things up enough. So like, there's some nuance to it. Easy, you get what I'm saying? Like, so like, obviously you want to play within rhythm. You want to have things that make sense in terms of, like, facilitating your offense. You want to make sure that you're not scared to throw into tight windows, which if you go look at that Saquon Barkley throw into the end zone, like, talk about threading the needle on a pass. He's definitely not scared to throw into windows. I would, if anything, I'd say, like, pull back on throwing into the window thing at times. And then it's just a matter of, like, one notable concern we can have from last week, which is pulling back the interceptions, pulling back the turnovers, right? The one fumble, I'm not going to put that on Jalen Hurts. That was just a missnap from the center. With that said, like, the other interceptions, like, there's some decision-making things going on, the turnover-worthy pass things. Like, obviously there's an element here of, yes, you can say field condition impact some things, but to me, that wasn't the bigger factor. I think it was more so comfort, familiarity versus real game reps with a new system. And I think it'll get better as time goes on, Easy, but that is a real concern. Like, so it's thematic, right? There's several themes to it. But ultimately, we'd like it to only be 1-2 read progressions, because, you're sequencing, the way that we sequence plays, the sequencing of plays from the offensive coordinator is so good that you don't need to go past first and second read options very often. That's when quarterbacks are cooking the league, KSF says, I think we will demolish Atlanta. Hurts should have his first 40-plus point NFL game. I just hope Hurts has 0 turnovers. What's up, True Will? How you doing? What's up, KSF, man? I'm sorry, but I forgot to say what's up. True Will says, great point, Steve. Take what the defense gives you. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's going to be one of the things to watch conceptually in this game is if they're heavy zone and they're just keeping over the top of us and they're not allowing us to get those vertical shots. That's something the way we sequence plays, how Kellen Moore calls the offense and sequences plays, but also, like, outside of the sequencing, how Jalen Hurts takes what the defense is given to him. Like, I think this is definitely kind of a test for that, to see where we are. Because that's one of the things that, we spent a lot of time working on in the offseason. So, we did pretty good versus the blitz last week, although I think overall towards pressure, it was a little shaky when there was pressure, but when it was blitz, when they were bringing more than, 4 defenders, when they were bringing that 5th defender or more, we kind of lit them up last week. So that part of it looked pretty good. Looks like we made some changes that worked its way out. But now it's going to be, okay, Green Bay didn't blitz us as much as they probably should have. And that's probably because we were so successful, it knocked them out of it pretty quickly. But now it's going to be like, okay, if we keep the ball in front of you, if we keep the ball in front of us, it's not getting over our heads. Will you play in structure? Can you play in structure? Can you facilitate offense by spreading the ball around, right? The thing that we heard like Johnny Mack and some of these other guys complain about, which is, can Jalen Hurts become the point guard of the offense? Can he distribute? I think that could be the type of game plan we see today, or not today. I wish it was today, but we see Monday. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, Trowell. That's going to be an interesting factor to it all. What's up, Brendan? How you doing, buddy? He said, I would be, sorry, man. Screen like scrolled way off of me. I would be surprised if teams start throwing some zone blitzing concepts at Jalen, something from the Dick LeBeau playbook, Dick LeBeau tree of things. We'll see. Easy said, I told you before, Zach Bond, he's the man. I was pretty high on Zach Bond when we made the signing because I had the feeling that he was going to be in that Von Ginkel role. I was just, when we got to camp and they weren't using him that way, I was like, well, I mean, they don't always tip their hand and show you what they're doing, but it is a little weird they're not using him in that role because I would have thought he at least had somewhat of a, and then we get into the game and they started using him exactly in that role that we thought. Joe said, Coach, do you foresee Kellen using a two-back set? I would love to see Barkley and Shipley or Gainwell sets. Yeah, he uses some pony. He does use some pony here and there. I don't know about it's kind of tough off of week one to make a determination in terms of percentages of your offense, but I mean, on the high end, you might see that creep its way up to 6 to 8% utilization. I don't think you're going to get like back in the day when, not Sean McVay, but Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan and all those guys. Kyle Shanahan's one of the recent ones that does a lot of pony set, used to at least. As Kyle Shanahan, there was another group that used to do a lot of pony sets too. And I think it was Minnesota for a while was doing a lot of pony sets. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll get up to the 30 percentile like some of those dudes were doing. Because I just think that we're predominantly 11-man personnel group, and then we'll play a little bit of 2 tight end as well. And then you'll mix in that pony set. But I mean, you might get a handful of snaps per game. You might get 2 or 3 snaps per game, Joe, and that can definitely give you some different looks. Defensively, that can cause you some problems. My guy Sean came in with a sack bond. Trewell says, good luck putting any of these guys' minds at ease. All it takes is a Jeff McClain report after a blowout. Yeah, it is what it is. What's up, Dank? How you doing, buddy? Dank says, if the Eagles were to sign Kirk as a backup, Monday night, week 2 will be a scrimmage. What's up, Sean? How you doing, buddy? Oh, appreciate that, guys. Appreciate that. Joe said, true. So very true. I think Nolan had a better game than people give him credit for. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of talking about this earlier in the week, Easy, where I said, I saw some concepts that looked like they were layering their pass rush to me, playing a little bit of that Pete Carroll-esque type of defense to where you layer the pass rush to keep the quarterback contained. And I mean, obviously that's going to affect your grading because they're not going to give credence to the fact that the scheme, dictates something like that. But also, where they were layering it last week, I don't anticipate that you would be layering your pass rush for Kirk Cousins. I think you're going to see a lot more 2-way goes and free rushes and stuff. I think it's going to be a little bit, little different strategy. Jordan Love compared to, Kirk Cousins is a completely different challenge from the pocket, if you will. Can we UT down on the quarterback runs? The defense is just waiting for it. Joe Mariachi. Defense doesn't know the play. It's read and react for them. The motion makes the defense play slower, trying to find their responsibilities. Exactly, DJ. One of the great things about using motion in terms of your zone concepts is that they're trying to defend space, so they don't know who's threatening the space when you start motioning and moving. So it can make it difficult for their standpoint to essentially defend space, if you will. Easy said Goddard was open on many plays. Yeah, Goddard had a couple opportunities. I was going to do a breakdown, but I had a vested interest there because I had played Goddard on an anytime touchdown on the books easy. So I was going to do the play where he threw the interception throwing the ball to Jalen or to AJ Brown. I was going to say, really what this is you start off with a full field read, and then at the line of scrimmage, you make your determination to go to half field. So you're going to pick the left side or the right side. So you're going to pick the high-low side, or you're going to pick the bottom side to where you have, the bottom side was a little bit more like a corner route built in with the hash. And then they had someone that was kind of building into an in-breaking route there. It's kind of how they were playing it. They were kind of layering it there. With that said, like I was going to say, like if he makes the decision to go to the high-low side of the ball, of the field with the reads, he could stay in the pocket at that point. If you stay in the pocket and you climb the pocket, that corner route for Dallas Goedert was open. That would have been a touchdown. I was going to be, I was going to draw up on the screen and be like, look, see right here, like right here, where Gate City Sports has the anytime touchdown the Dallas Goedert bet. This is where the ball needs to go. But I was like, I get he made the read to the bottom of the screen. Green Bay did a really good job of covering that concept initially, so he had to roll the pocket to try to create space. My thought process would be like, because here's the thing from a quarterback coach perspective, easy how you work with quarterbacks. Like you don't like when a guy makes a mistake like that on the football, like they know they made a mistake. It doesn't need to be said that you made a mistake there. But what you do want to do is you want to go through like situationally what led to get you to there, right? You don't want to scald them for it. You want to work them through it. Like what makes you go to the read to the bottom compared to the top? Why didn't you like the high low? Why, you know what I'm saying? Like you walk them through that. That's what you're doing. We'll see. We'll see easy. I don't think it's going to be a problem long term. I do think some of this is the fact that we are adjusting into the scheme. I love how much space receivers have in this offense. What's up, Dank? Yeah, Dank, it's true, bro. Goddard was open on many occasions. Yes, and Smitty was a lot in the slot. I wonder if that gets changed. No, I don't think it will easy. I mean, Smitty's still going to be primarily an outside, receiver, but if you go to my videos easy, I told everybody this was coming. I told you guys that, he's not going to play as much from the slot as they played, Keenan Allen, as they played, CeeDee Lamb, but I would expect an uptick here because number one, Devontae Smith's production out of the slot, especially if you go back to 2022 and how productive he was, like he was really super productive there. And I just think that he's the guy that can really make it challenging for defenses to defend us when he's playing in the slot, especially if you have him in a stack. It's kind of the forward stack guy. So you can use him as the outside stacker or the forward stack. But I think the forward stack where you can clearly create some free releases for him, especially if you want to release him outside and take advantage of it. If you want to release him outside, probably inside stack makes the most sense. If you want to release him inside, probably outside stack makes the most sense there. But nonetheless, like, I do think that when they were playing him in the slot, like he's super productive, to be quite honest. Excellent point, Mr. Sandman. I heard that play, which led to the end zone INT, was a Peyton Manning play. If it was, it's good that he's looking to the sheriff for a reference. I just think he's not Manning. You got to keep in mind how bad Manning was his rookie year, man. Like, we got to give guys time to develop. That's part of it too. I mean, it does take time for these guys to develop. And I think in today's modern NFL, we don't give guys enough time to develop. Like, I think we treat every quarterback like they're Trent Dilfer. and most of these dudes are more talented than that, but like it does, like it's not hard. Like it's not hard. It's not easy to win at this level, man. I mean, the levels of throws, like the windows for these throws they're contested, man. Like, I think if the average person really had to stand in there with a football and try to throw against these coverages, like it would become apparent that anytime you get a yard of separation, like you're definitely celebrating. Like that's a lot of separation in the NFL. I am willing to give Hurts this week and next week to get better with the turnovers. I'll give him some grace since they didn't play in preseason. I'm not worried about the turnovers, but him leaving the pocket early again does. He didn't leave that pocket early because of false pressure, though, easy. He made the right decision to leave the pocket, to be fair. That was the correct decision. He can't know that, like the players aren't going to break away from AJ if he doesn't move the pocket. You know what I'm saying? Like the assumption is that if he just steps up into the pocket, AJ could have broken free. Well, no, because then that changes the leverage of the coverage. Like that's not true. That's not how quarterbacks play. It's not how coverages are played. He moved the pocket because Green Bay actually did a really good job of covering down there. And he's like, okay, like nothing is open right now. I've got to force the issue a little bit. Now the mistake was throwing across your body. I know, like I said, I understood what he was trying to do. He's trying to give a jump ball to AJ Brown, who's tremendous at jump balls. Like, I got a 50-50 shot with AJ Brown. Like I want to take my chances, but he slipped. I was late coming, across my body with the throw, like, everything together. And I think situationally it needs to make more sense. Jalen needs to consider situations more, such as like, oh, we got a 5-point lead. If I kick it here, I'm creating an 8-point, what I'm saying? If we kick a field goal here, this is an 8-point game. This is going to be incredibly hard for this team to come back from if we put up, an 8-point lead at this point. Like that's the part to me where it was to me, that mistake, that's the more challenging issue with it, right? I understand why he was trying to do it, but it's like, man, given the field conditions, given the circumstances of where you were within the game, like I just don't think it was wise to try to throw across your body there late. I understood what he was trying to do, but to me that was the issue. Stats don't tell the whole story in this defense. We're playing as a unit rather than just trying to make stats. Some of our players that don't get the stats are playing violent and with attitude. I saw a quarterback school breakdown of Hurts turnover, and it makes me think it's a no preseason issue. They were because he was late. The only issue I saw was him throwing a blind check down and a near pick. Yeah, that was a busted play, and yeah, he made a terrible decision there, Ben, on that busted play when he threw it down. I know exactly which one you're talking about. AJ always open Brown wasn't able to watch the game. Did they utilize motion a lot on the first Barkley touchdown? They used it beautifully. Oh, they utilized motion quite a bit in this game. I think it was like 65, 66%, something in that area. We used motion in that game. I think it was 20 separate dropbacks from the passing game perspective had motion. I want to say 20 rushing plays, I think had motion built in as well. Joe said, absolutely true. Stats are for us nerds. Football is the ultimate team sport. 11 guys doing their job as a unit it's tough to bear. Devontae made his name in Alabama in the slot. he had that 5 touchdown game. Yeah, he's pretty good out of the slot, to be honest about it. Joe said, yeah, AJ, yeah, they use motion quite a bit. Smitty is productive anywhere you want to put him. He's a dog. Yeah, he's a good player. Like, he's definitely a luxury, AJ. Like, that's a pretty big luxury to have, man. To your quarterback point, the Baker Mayfield critics are tucking their tails right now. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it ends with Baker, but he does look pretty good right now. I'm not going to lie. Like, guy's playing at a pretty high level. Sometimes it's organization too. It's the organization, Will. Sometimes I think that ruins quarterbacks. Cleveland's got a knack for ruining quarterbacks, to be quite honest. I mean, going all the way back to when they relaunched that franchise again. You know what I mean? Like, it was bad. I mean, that relaunch was incredibly bad. They've pretty much ruined Carr's career. Baker Mayfield is trash. I can't wait for week 4. I want revenge. Clean pocket doesn't mean someone is open. Those Twitter GMs just be chatting. Yeah, that's the thing is like, it takes some experience playing the position and understanding from a coaching standpoint, like what they're trying to achieve. And then like, yeah, if you got a quarterback who can be mobile, like, yes, if he makes the read to the top side of the screen, then he should have stepped up and threw the ball to Dallas. Like that would have been the correct footwork. That would have been the correct way of working the pocket there. But when he chose the bottom read, and that's what I'm saying, like that's in the film room. Like you got to get in the film room and you're not like, when you're dealing with a quarterback, you're dealing with athletes and players, like basically what you're doing is, and I know people say like, oh, we're babying them. Kind of, but not really. Like what you're doing is you're not going in there. It's like managing kids. You know what I mean? Like you're not going in there and like berating them. Like, that it's not productive. Like berating anyone in any circumstances, like it's probably not going to be a productive conversation. But like basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to walk them through why he made the read he made. What did he see from the leverage of the defense? And like, you know what I'm saying? Like you let him walk his way, you lead him to the water, right? You let him walk his way to the decision-making of saying like, oh yeah, I should have been on this top read, not this bottom read. That's, when I got up to the line of scrimmage, we should have been looking top. And the other thing is Will, and I don't know because I'm not in the room with them. For me, when I normally see empty sets like that, that is normally like you go up there, you have a full field read initially, and then right before your snap, you're making a predetermined decision of whether you're going top or bottom. All right. Now, some quarterbacks, it could be post-snap technically. It depends on the kind of leverage the defense is playing, all those type of things. But most of the time it is done pre-snap, and then you're not even really looking towards the other side. Now, you could try to hold them. Now, sometimes you got something in the middle of the field, and that's where I think you can make the determination that you were going to go to this side, but you had something working in the middle of the hashes. You get what I'm saying? And because it's working in the middle of the hashes and you want to try to create spacing there, you might try to move a safety so you are looking to the top of the screen, which then, of course, if you see a guy like, Dallas Goedert coming open on a corner like that, then you probably then could, it would be considered a full read because you're originally on those 3 reads that are over here. Now you're coming over to a 4th read, basically. With that said, like that's a very special circumstance. It's not done as much in the NFL as people think. And honestly, you wouldn't want it done in the modern NFL because it takes a long time for those type of plays to develop. And if you're playing a good enough pass rush in the modern NFL, where clearly, the defensive linemen in most situations are they're far greater athletes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be holding the ball for extended periods of time. I think people would be shocked to realize that most progressions 2 read at most. You get some 3 reads depending on the circumstances. And of course, certain quarterbacks are, very nuanced and been in the league for a long time. So of course they can complete 3 reads, but most of the NFL is on, if you got a really good enough coach, you're 1 reading it. They should be able to design it. But then you also got to, you got high-low concepts and things like that to where it is a 2 read. But yeah, I think some people get this feeling like they're scanning left to right on reads. And it's like, no, like you might hold somebody if you're going to go right. You might hold someone on the left to try to clear somebody out of the space. You know what I mean? But you're not truly reading most of the times left to right just because of the amount of time it takes to complete that type of play. It would be a little problematic if you did that too often. You better have the Philadelphia Eagles level of protection. Like you better have Lane Johnson out there and you better have Jordan Mailata out there at the tackle spot, especially on third down when they're going to blitz you. Is the insistence on half-field reads more Jalen or Sirianni? I feel like good defenses, especially last year, had an easier time defending it. No, like I just said, easy. That's the entire NFL. Patrick Mahomes is half-field reading, man. It's just that Andy Reid was better at scheming it. To be honest, like, you go to the Super Bowl. Those plays that Mahomes beat us on, those weren't full-field reads down in the red zone. Those were half-field reads. Those were motion-based half-field reads where he got leverage because he built it in through motion. And then the Eagles failed to communicate the play correctly. And then Mahomes beat him on a half-field read. Like most of these dudes, like I said, guys, the amount of athleticism that has transpired in the NFL from like the 90s when I don't know, easy. I'm not too sure what your age group is, but like, if you're around my age group, you're in your 30s or 40s, like, that 90s and early 2000 eras football is like, it's not the same anymore. Like you're not getting that level of time to throw the ball. You're not getting these built-in really big play actions from under center. Those things aren't as prominent. They still exist, but they're not as prominent as they once were. Now it's a little bit more of the, hyper fast spacing type game stuff. So half-field reads work just because number one, it's about rhythm. You're trying to get your offense into like a rhythm, and then past the rhythm, the quarterback's job is the rhythm, but the coordinator's job is the sequencing, right? You get what I'm saying? Like quarterback's got to be in rhythm. That is obviously the coordinator can help you with rhythm, but that is the quarterback's responsibility. And then the coordinator's job is sequencing the plays. Like the sequences and plays need to make sense. Like you shouldn't be going to 3 and 4 reads very often. If you got a quarterback who's constantly going to 3 or 4 reads, you got a trash offensive coordinator in today's NFL, in my opinion. Dawad said, sorry guys, can this thing end? September is our preseason for the last 4 years. Just glad we have competent coordinators. Hurts is going to flourish in Kellen's offense. He's teaching him how to be a real pocket quarterback and take his time. Smitty in the slot does that. His big playability takes his big playability away. No, it depends on how you scheme it. Easy. It's all up on the scheming. You know what I mean? Like it's dependent upon the way you scheme things open. Like the vast majority of Devontae's receptions in that game, a pretty good portion of them came in that 4-minute offense set. So they weren't trying to beat them over the top with anything. They were trying to drive the ball, convert first downs, kill clocks. I mean, that's, situationally has to do with that too. But I mean, you can scheme it up. You can scheme up, a slot receiver to have a vertical concept there. Glizzy said, if you go back to our offense last year, Kellen Moore's offense isn't what Brian Johnson or what, Shane Steichen was running. But if you go back to those offenses, look at the slots and those offenses. It was vertical. Those guys were meant to space the field. Those guys were meant for those big splash plays. Glizzy said, heard from a family friend before a Green Bay game that Rodgers would be out 6 to 8 weeks with a hand. I didn't believe it at first, laugh out loud. Oh, wow. Is he going to be out 6 to 8 weeks? Glizzy, I didn't know that. Huh. What happened to his hand? I thought he was going to be back this week. That's why the Eagles struggled so much last season. Every team they played knew the Eagles playbook. Yeah, I would say that I'm not saying that this is a tough one with Brian Johnson, right? Because I think Brian Johnson had a tough job because he was working in the middle of the transition between Kelsey and Hurts, and they were already trying to devolve power to Hurts, and that's why they had Brian Johnson there as the coordinator. is they wanted a guy who had been a former quarterback, to kind of work with some of the determinations made pre-snap at the line of scrimmage, right? Obviously, protection not being one of those things. Kelsey clearly told us that he was still handling those, and it was his fault down the stretch when they were missing the slides. With that said, I will say that was a tough job to have, your first time out, like you're trying to work a quarterback into this. Like that was a very tough assignment for a first time coordinator, to be honest. I don't know if Brian Johnson will have success later on in the league. I know he's well regarded around the league. Well, we just have to see. Like, just because it didn't work out here doesn't mean it won't work out somewhere else. But I do think that one of the things that was shown to us was he didn't sequence plays. We were talking about earlier about sequencing. He didn't sequence plays, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason for earlier plays setting up later plays, if that makes sense, right? I mean, we just didn't get that hook coming in there. Now, he did enough to win a lot of games early on, but I feel like we were leaning on Jalen Hurts heavily to win those games, to be honest. AJ said, I like Kellen Moore. He wasn't perfect, but I'm interested to see how they use Dotson once he knows the playbook. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one too. That's where I think it gets interesting, easy to your question here. When you put them in stack sets, building off of what AJ said here. So if you put them in those 3x1, like bunch and stack sets, I think it gets interesting because now you can play around with who's the inside and outside, receiver inside those stacks. So, Devontae could be outside, he could be inside. Same thing could be said with, Jahan. Jahan could be inside, Jahan could be outside. Like, I think there's a lot of athleticism there. Like, it could get really interesting. Dante said, what's up, Gates? I'm just tuning in, but are we closer to understanding who Jalen Hurts is as a quarterback? For example, we know that Dak is what Dak is and is not. Yeah, I think we know that Jalen's a good quarterback. I mean, now I think what we're learning about Jalen is as time goes on and we're expanding the offense. Like, if you've got a good enough built-in structure to the offense, Jalen's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Now, as you devolve power to the quarterback, so decisions at the line of scrimmage and setting protections and doing those things, right? The next level, like that's where we don't know yet. Like he's very young and early into the process, and we're still learning, where he's at there conceptually. We know that he's a film room junkie. This guy has the desire to get better. It's not a lack of preparation. It's not a lack of willingness and want to. It's, can he do it when he's on the field? And when we heard the early reports, I don't know if you guys remember those really early reports about Jalen and why the Eagles drafted him. You guys remember when they were talking about like they had taken those like spatial like cognition test and he had scored like ridiculously high on them. And I don't know that these things always translate to football, guys, to be quite honest. I'm a little about that, but I think the thought process is if you score high in terms of spatial recognition, then when you get out on the football field, that has a much more direct way of translating. Has to be realized. We'll see, guys. I don't know. Steve said, hey, Gates, got to say Baker Mayfield is not trash anymore. It sometimes takes a new beginning for a player to finally shine. I'm happy for him. And then Steve said, oh, and by the way, fly Eagles fly. I hear you, bro. Mr. Sandman, that was so true. We fans could see the play before it started, so we knew the defense knew it. We were too predictable. From a coaching perspective, Steve, do you think our fans overreact without context too much? Yeah, of course. Of course they do, but like you have to take the good with the bad. That's what makes the city special. You know what I mean, True Will? Like, yeah, obviously that happens like a ridiculous amount of times in this city. But it's also like, it's because people care. Like someone like me who has a platform like this and I get to talk to people about football, like it would be really boring if I was playing for like one of these really buttoned up kind of fan bases. Like that just, you know what I mean? Like the overly polite football fan bases. Like it would be boring. Like it would just be boring. I love the fact I can come in here and like I got people like, like EEZ, like, he'll push back some points like, hey, what about this? What do you think about this? Like, I like that. I like having that back and forth with people. As long as people are being respectful and they're keeping it within the realm of football, like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's interesting. I love the fact that inside of this community, you get guys like Mr. Sandman, who's a former collegiate player, Jalen Williams, a former collegiate player. My guy, Caleb Brennan, former collegiate player. Like, we've got that's not even half of the people that are actually in this community that played ball at the college level. But I mean, we have so many people inside of this community that have very, very specific knowledge about certain things like line play, We got a couple of guys I know that played defensive back and played a little linebacker, D2 and D3 level, and like they're pretty skilled when you talk about back seven and like kind of like coverage schemes and what's trying to be accomplished on plays. Like you don't get that everywhere, man. Yeah, you definitely don't get that everywhere. Do you think Jalen needs to lose weight? I think he did lose weight, Dante. To be honest, I think he did lose some weight. Am I happy for Baker? I mean, sure, that's cool and all, but in week 4, I want to demolish the Bucks. I want to blow out win. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, especially the way that we should have won that game in the playoffs. We were definitely the better team, and the way we got manhandled there. Yeah, I feel you on that one, AJ. I'm right there with you. Trill, I know that too many fans overreact. After that first loss, they are ready to take a high dive off the Walt Whitman. Laugh out loud. Yeah, definitely, man. People are still hung up on the Greg Cosell report. Did you see that one, Steve? The one about Hurts being a half-field reader? Yeah, but I think, and like Greg Cosell's not lying to them. I mean, he's telling the truth. He's primarily a half-field reader, but I think what people are misunderstanding is the fact that that's like 95% of the NFL, including the game's best quarterback right now. He's a half-field reader. Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes straight up said his rookie season, so not his rookie year, but his first year as a starting quarterback. This man admitted he did not understand the playbook. He did not understand how to read coverage. It was all off of just natural ability. And he's still progressing to this day at those things, but he's just naturally gifted. like it's funny, man. Is your merchant site still up? I'm working on some stuff. It's going to be back up, Dante. I'm going to put it back up, but I'm working on some new releases for it. Reed runs half field too, but I felt like this game, ours was a bit generic. Maybe that's just week 1. Hopefully it changes the upcoming weeks. I mean, I think you can nitpick any like set of plays, like a small grouping of plays and say like, but I think that's in every offense. Like every offense is going to have its built-in structure stuff easy that, the whole league runs, and it's not, it's more so like, did you predict the coverages correctly? Because even though the whole league sees it and they know what it is, if you get caught with your pants down in terms of being in the wrong coverage, it won't matter. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's stuff like that. I mean, the whole league runs some of these, there's nothing like new about the route tree concepts. They're all the same. It's just how you disguise them. Dewad said, when Jahan got up to speed or gets up to speed, yeah, that 11 personnel mixed with Pony, whew, it's going to be crazy. Callan likes to run power out of 11 personnel too. Rodgers isn't out. I think he meant Jordan Love. Yeah, if he's only 6 to 8 weeks, yeah, then yeah, that's not too bad for Jordan Love then. Yeah, thank you, DJ. Exactly. It's a new offense, and Hurts has to learn his first, second, third reads for dozens of new plays. The play call language helps, but his juggling a lot of new stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's what he said early on, too, in the press conference. 95% of this is new, and I think people thought, like, oh, God, he doesn't understand the route combinations. Like, no, I mean, the route combinations are the route combinations. The route tree is the route tree. Like, that's not hard to figure out. It's more so the lingo, the language, the formations they're running this stuff from. Like, it's that stuff. I'm disappointed in the lack of under center play action. That was more bread and butter in Dallas. I think that was probably not so much Kellen Moore, to be honest. Kellen's quarterbacks have primarily been shotgun. I think that was the remnants of what we saw from the Clapper, Jason Garrett, and then also, God, what was the dude's name that used to be the offensive coordinator there? They all came out of his tree, by the way. Let me see. The Dallas Cowboys coordinator. OC. Scott Linehan. So yeah, all these dudes like Kellen Moore, especially Doug Nussmeier. Doug Nussmeier's definitely from Scott Linehan coached his college team. was his OC. They all come out of that Linehan tree. So that's where I think some of that play, under center stuff comes from. But I think once Kellen Moore kind of got a hold of that, if you go look at Dak's numbers, definitely ran more under center stuff than we're used to, but it definitely, it's not a Shanahan offense. It's not a McVay offense. And even Shanahan is diverting into shotgun play nowadays. Like he's not a heavy under center guy no more either, to be honest. Now, Jalen, I think was like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 plays on the season. I think was under center last year. So like, in that regards, you could probably say like, yeah, it's going to be more than that, Steve. He's going to be I'd say closer to 50 than closer to 10. We'll see. I mean, it's still going to be predominantly in a shotgun offense. We also got to keep in mind, though, too, easy that a lot of the play action stuff from under center, it comes down to the comfort level of your quarterback. There are quarterbacks that just don't like to turn their backs to the defense. And that's one of the side effects, unfortunately, of play action passing from under center. You got to turn your back to the defense for a second. Some quarterbacks don't like to do that. Now, there are ways to mitigate that to be fairly easy. Like you can do semi boots, you can do rollouts, and then that kind of the timing kind of allows you to come back from doing that play action pass into the semi boot or into the full boot. And then that gives you the opportunity to basically catch up in terms of the timing of seeing the leverage of the defense and the coverage. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why they do or don't do it. Steve said, Smitty is unreal. He's the smallest guy on the field by far, and he is dragging two big dudes for him for the first down, and it was like 2 yards. Yeah, Smitty's he's a dog, man. He's tough. He's definitely a tough guy. Personally, I love the kid. Jalen Hurts is my quarterback. I believe he's going to be very successful. He's still very young and has a lot of growth to go. I believe he's going to be great. It's interesting. The two leading tacklers were Zach Bond and TJ Edwards. Yeah, that is kind of an interesting thing. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I want to see Mitchell stay right where he is. I don't care if he loses a game for us. He needs the reps at corner. They say speed kills, but football awareness is more important. Yeah, that's true, DJ. Like you could be fast, but you're only as fast as your ability to process the play. It's very true, DJ. Like all that speed is for nothing if you can't process the play. I think there's a lot of teams out there that would love to have a Jalen Hurts. He's not perfect, but he's quarterback number one. Yeah. I mean, look at the Giants right now with Daniel Jones. Like, how bad would that front office, like what would they give up to get Jalen Hurts? Like, I think they would sink everything they had to get him at this point. So I'd say 100% hit them legs. Hey, man, I appreciate y'all. What's up, Wealthy Mind? How you doing, buddy? Says Steve, seriously, have you reached to the organization about working with their scouting department? This is football knowledge that needs to be applied behind YouTube. I've had opportunities, not from the Eagles, man. I had an opportunity from one of our division rivals to actually work for them, and I was like, I turned it down. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie, Wealthy Mind. If they reached out to me and offered me a job in analytics or in scouting or something like that, I would take it in a heartbeat. I mean, just to officially be able to put on a resume that I worked for the Philadelphia Eagles, look, I'm a Newcastle County kid, man. Grew up in the town of Newcastle, just a couple miles outside of Wilmington. Like, I would love that. Leave a like and subscribe. Appreciate you, Dante. Is it time to let the RPO go? It's getting worse every year. Teams have figured it out. I think you're seeing a pulling back. I don't know if you completely let it go easy, but I think your point stands that you could just look at the Eagles numbers and see the Eagles were pulling back on it, to be honest. With Jalen Hurts, they've pulled back on it every year. So, I mean, yeah, I think you're going to continue to see a little bit of a downward trend, and I think it makes it more effective, right? The more surprised you are when it happens, the more effective it'll be. Mr. Sandman, exactly. The greats are those who think, who outthink the opponent. Yeah, exactly. Would like to see some rollouts, waggles more to that help Hurts too. That would help Hurts too. My guy DJ says, I recall playing O-line in high school. I felt bad for the quarterback having to remember all those calls in the huddle. We only had to listen for a particular code word to know our responsibilities. Oh, man. What's really funny is when you get a call and you memorize the call, but then you start going to the huddle and you get ready to recite the call and you forget the call. That's the worst, man. Like, and what it is like any other time, like my memory works fine, man. But like, yeah, that's the worst, dude. Everyone knows what you just did too. Like, you forgot the call. It's like, all you can say, shh, stop. Like, yeah, it is tough, man. Cause it depends on the playbook too. Like, there's a reason why the West Coast offense became so popular, right? Because it took the nomenclature of plays and brought it down to a real small, size, make it easier. You run these traditional set offense stuff and like, that would be interesting to like take a playbook from like the 90s and the 2000s that like people my age were running and just have someone like as smart as Jalen Hurts is, give him those play calls and just see how he does. Not that like he knows how to execute the plays, guys. Like we were running very basic concepts, but I'm talking about the nomenclature of it. What's your thoughts? I can't remember who said it, but most coaches can't teach under center. Do you think that's true? Uh, I think it's harder to teach in terms of like when you have young quarterbacks, if you're trying to teach them like where to reach the drop, where your step should reach in terms of your drop, or where the receiver reaches the top of the route stem. That's the timing of a play. I think it's more challenging from a footwork standpoint, just doing the footwork from under center. I do think some quarterbacks, like I said earlier, guys, I don't think some quarterbacks like to have their backs turned to the defense. Peyton, so I brought this up. Peyton Manning was not a big fan of being put under center. Now, he would say the right things. And when he got to Denver with Gary Kubiak, he said the right things with Gary Kubiak, but he didn't want to be under center. He didn't want to be under center. But the funny thing is that Peyton played well from under center, even though he didn't like it. Tom Brady was a little bit more partial to being put underneath center. For whatever reason, Brady was like, no, the play action passing draws that second level of the defense kind of up to me a little bit and gives me some some spacing to work with, and I can pick it apart. But it's tough, man. There's multi factors that go into it, to be honest, Dante. I think Kellen Moore is a smart dude. Him being a former quarterback, I think he will get Hurts where he needs to be. Yeah, I like Kellen. I know the criticisms there. Like I talk to, I have friends that are Cowboy content creators. I mean, to be honest, Jay Tuck and I talk quite a bit. And Tuck told me the issues he had with him in Dallas, and it really revolved around that 4-minute offense concept and like being able to basically drive games out. It's the fact he felt like he got a little too pass happy, which is kind of funny because when I talked to Tuck, I'm like, it's weird because like I understand what you're saying, and I think there's some legitimacy to what the request is there, but in the same light, like you'll get into conversations with people and they'll be quick to use those stats when they're throwing for all these yards and time that game time, it doesn't matter. Like they're quick to use those stats though in a debate, and it's like, yeah, but I mean those things came back to haunt you in games that mattered because you didn't have an adequate 4-minute offense. Like look, week 1 against Green Bay, he passed the test with his 4-minute offense. I mean, we'll see if we feel the same way by midpoint, right? I mean, I like him. I think Kellen Moore is a smart guy. I think his offense is it's innovative. I don't know if he's going to be as good. Like I think very highly of Shane Steichen as a coordinator. I don't know what he's going to be as a head coach, but as a coordinator, I think very highly of Shane Steichen. I don't know. We'll see, man. I mean, I'm hopeful that Kellen Moore is going to be on that Steichen level. Now, Steichen, the thing about Steichen is, and I can't predict it with Kellen Moore yet, is that Steichen had that clutch gene, man. When you talk about play sequencing, Steichen had the clutch gene with Jalen, man. Those two together were just clutch in certain situations in 22. I mean, they were just clutch when we needed them to be clutch in certain situations that year. We got to see if Kellen Moore and Jalen have that clutch gene together. I think that's an important factor of it all, guys, to be quite honest. All right, y'all. We've been going for a little over an hour. I got to jump off here. I got some things I got to do around the house. I wanted to come back on because I missed yesterday's. I apologize. I had the baby and she was wearing me out, guys. The baby was wearing me out, man. She had me up and down, running, grabbing food, all kinds of stuff, guys. There was no way. It would have been chaos to try to do a live stream with her yesterday, but she's in daycare today. So I wanted to jump on and talk to you guys a little bit about what I was seeing from the tape. My takeaways are I would expect to see a heavy zone game, guys. I would expect to see a situation to where we're going to have an ability to judge this idea of playing within the rhythm of the offense, right? Playing on schedule ball within the structure of the offense, right? Versus these heavy zone teams where they're trying to take away the deep ball. I think this is an opportunity, guys. I would watch that closely in this game. I don't judge things until afterwards, guys. But by the time we get to week 5 or week 6, I'm going to get a little bit more definitive about what I'm saying. Like that's when you're going to see me really start talking it, because then I'm going to have an idea of what's going on. Right now, though, I think we're in that you kind of have to wait and see, period of time here, right? I think we should beat Atlanta. I'm hoping we get a 7-point or greater win. I mean, it'd be we didn't get any of those last year, but yeah, I mean, I think we're heading towards that area, guys. Man, I miss SS Dude was a dog. Yeah, Shane Steichen was a dog, man. I agree with you, AJ. I thought Kellen was brilliant on Friday. He ran an entire drive with a 2 running back pony set. The Packers weren't at all prepared for that look. There you go, DJ. Yeah, trying to judge the clutch gene, right? Like, yeah, what I was talking about earlier, like Shane Steichen had that clutch gene in terms of sequencing plays. Like, it went really well for Kellen Moore in game 1. I don't want to, week 1's the greatest liar in the NFL, so I'm trying to be a little cautious here. You know what I'm saying, DJ? But yes, I'm hopeful too, sir. That's amazing. The guy who knows the most in the room is waiting to see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just feel like you have to wait and see this, to see exactly what this offense is. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all so much. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Again, man,